Hi everyone, it's Nichol Magouirk for Simon Says Stamp, and today I have a 6x8 art journal page featuring the Julie Nutting Prima paper doll stamp Sea Sally and also the cute little Simon the dog from the seasonal Simon stamp set. To start my page, I'm using a trimmed down piece of Simon Says Stamp sea glass cardstock. I've cut it down to 6x8. And I'm using the Waves stencil from the latest This Is the Life Simon Says Stamp release and some tumbled glass and salty ocean distress inks to add some color and texture to my paper and give it that wave background. Because the Wave stencil is not quite as wide as the 6 inches, I'm having to kind of move it over a little bit and overlap the stencil design. This is okay because I really want more the illusion of water and I don't need that definite wave look. Especially since I'm layering 2 different distress ink colors together for my page. So I'm simply just moving it over and applying the ink with the mini ink blending tool to get the wave look that I'm going for, or water look that I'm going for. Next, I have a piece of pattern paper. This is a text print from Pebbles that I'm using to stamp the Sea Sally stamp on. I really like the look of book print paper for my paper dolls. I'm also stamping the design, or at least the bottom half of the design, on this really awesome rainbow colored scallop design 6x6 pattern paper. This is from Bo Bunny from their Lemonade Stand paper pad, and I'm going to cut out her fishtail. I didn't like how one of the sides of the fishtail wasn't exactly like the other, so I did end up stamping it again so that it had more of that blue in the tip of it, so it looked a little bit more natural. You can fussy cut and piece them together however you want to. I did stamp my doll with Memento Tuxedo black ink so that I could color her in with Copic markers. I know there are other inks that will work with Copics. I find I get really good results with the Memento, and especially using a non-recommended quote-unquote paper for Copic coloring like this pattern paper, I really wanted to stick with an ink I knew wouldn't bleed. Here's where I pieced together her fin so that it looks a little more natural. I stamped the design again on some of the yellow pattern paper from the Bo Bunny Lemonade Stand for her top and also for her headband, and I will stamp the crown from the Boutique Prima stamp set, which is an accessory stamp set for the dolls, and I will stamp that on the yellow paper and cut it out as well. Now for her hair, I decided to experiment a little bit. I like to do this especially in my art journal pages. I'm using E11, 13, 15, and 18 to color in her hair. A lot of times I'll jot down different color combinations that I see other places that I want to try out, and this was one of those experiments. I'm using a feathering technique to feather in her hair to give a more realistic look, especially for the hair. And just layering in the color, I went from lightest to darkest, and then I did go back in with one of my lighter colors to blend out any of those dark lines that maybe got a tiny bit too harsh, but I don't want to blend it too much and lose that hair-like look that the feathering gives. So here is where I went back in with that lighter color, just a tiny bit to kind of smooth out some of those harsher lines. I'm going to go ahead and glue her outfit in place now that I have her hair and her skin colored in. Layer on those pieces for the center of her fishtail. I have a 6x6 piece of scrap paper here in a tan color that I have stamped a Dilutions border stamp on. I love this. This is going to be the sand along the bottom of my ocean floor. And then I've used another Dilutions stamp for the seaweed and coral there there in the left corner of my page. I stamped it in black first because that'll give me a good guide once I stamp and fussy cut the elements out of some other pattern paper. I did cut those out and fussy cut them, and the coral was so tricky. So I didn't really want to do it that way. I am glad I did because I think it flows nicer, but it was kind of a pain to cut out. And I'll show you how I disguised any of those little boo-boos that I had when cutting that out here in a little bit. Now for the quote on my page, both Stephanie and I use the same quote, and I am using the Lawn Fawn Milo's ABCs for mine. And I love this font. It's tall and skinny letters and just so fun to use. I've used it multiple times in so many different ways, and it worked really well on this page. I tried to stamp it following some of those wave lines that the stencil created for a little bit more of a natural look, I guess. And then I am going to take the fish stamps from the Best Fishes stamp set from Simon Says Stamp, those little solid fish images, and stamp those in my watery background to look like schools of fish. I'm going to stamp those with the Simon Says Stamp black ink and add detail to the eyes with a white gel pen. I just love these little fish. The Best Fishes stamp set is one of my favorites. Once I have all of those in place, I am going to adhere the rest of the seaweed then and coral. I decided to leave a couple of pieces loose so that they could be on top of the mermaid, so it gives a more three-dimensional look. I stamped some of those fish there, and I'm adding the white detail with the Sakura white pen. And now I'm adding some shading and things to the mermaid's tail using some Copic gray markers. I'm using the C2 and C00. And then the Stardust glitter pen, I'm tracing those scallops on her fishtail and fins for some fun glitter detail. And also using the Wink of Stella clear glitter brush marker over the inside pieces on her fish tail, her top, her crown, and her headband. Now I'm attaching the seaweed and coral using the Zig glue pen, and then I'll put her in place and glue those three pieces that I left loose on top of her. Once I have those glued in place, to disguise any of the little mess-ups I made while fussy cutting the coral, I'm taking some glossy accents and adding a layer of that to all of the coral pieces. I like the way it looks, plus it does help disguise any little boo-boos I may have made. I'm stamping the image of Simon from the seasonal Simon stamp set on the same text paper that I used for the doll. I like the cohesiveness of using the same print paper for both images. Again, coloring him in with some Copic markers, blending all of that out. Once I have him all colored, I did add some detail to his eyes and nose with the Sakura black and white glaze pens. And then I thought Simon can't really breathe under the water like Sea Sally can, so I found a cut file in the Silhouette online store of a scuba mask, and I die cut that from some scraps of pattern paper and vellum and pieced that together to place over his face there. And to size it, I measured across his face, and it measured about 3/4 of an inch. And so I simply resized the scuba mask in the Silhouette software and cut it out, and it fit just perfectly, and I love how it ended up. I think it really adds a lot to the page. I stamped some bubbles from the Best Fishes stamp set using the Salty Ocean Distress ink, and then added some detail to those again with the glossy accents. And finally, I'm using some of the sand dollars and seashell images from the Lawn Fawn Life is Good stamp set. Stamped those on some scraps of pattern paper and cut those out to kind of complete the scene along the bottom of my page. I did add some detail to these images, again with the cool gray markers that I used for the mermaid and the white and glitter Sakura pins. The last thing I did on my page was take those white and glitter pens and add some dot detail along that bottom border to give it a more realistic sand type of look. And I just did that by dotting kind of randomly along the bottom. I hope you've enjoyed this very fast and furious explanation of how I put together my 6x8 Prima paper doll page, art journal page, I guess I should say. Thanks for watching, and for more information, please visit the Simon Says Stamp blog.